We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Monday, but don't get excited. We're not starting the week yet. Still a day off for most folks. It's Memorial Day weekend. We're pushing through the weekend. Some things happening here and there, but not as crazy as what's going to happen in this upcoming week starting tomorrow. We're going to have the closing arguments in the Manhattan District. Ultimately, it will go to the jury, and hopefully, we'll have some kind of verdict by the end of the week or early next week. When that comes down, Donald Trump will be convicted of multiple criminal charges, regardless of what anybody says. That's what's going to happen. And that's when everything changes, not only for Donald Trump, but for the Republicans and for us in general. This is going to put a stain on Donald Trump that he'll never, ever get rid of. He won't be able to talk his way out of, and it's going to be nothing but trouble for him. Now, yesterday was a pretty easygoing day for me. Most of my days are pretty easygoing. I didn't do a lot of TikToks yesterday because there wasn't that much to talk about. I did two TikToks, and because I only did two TikToks, I didn't do one of those TikTok podcasts. I know people will be saying, well, fuck, it was Sunday. It's a holiday weekend. You should be doing other things than listening to fucking TikToks. I only did two. I didn't do the TikTok little featurette thing that I've been doing as of late. I will likely do one today and continuing to do that. But on those days when there's not much going on, it's not really that easy to do that. I don't want to make a TikTok just for the sake of doing a TikTok. It has to have some point. But I had a good day yesterday. It was my wife's birthday. We don't get too crazy on birthdays for her and I. We go out and do a lot of things. We buy what we want when we want. So it's not that kind of ceremony. But our son, both our sons were here, and our granddaughter, and we went swimming. It was fun. Hanging out with that little girl is a great joy. And she is a sassy little kid. She When we used to go into the pool last year, she'd go out in the middle with us and we'd hold her and everything was cool and she'd swim it back and forth between us. But this year she's afraid to come off the steps. She's playing in the steps. She's not afraid of the water. She just doesn't want to go into the middle part where we'd been before. So we were trying to coax her. Both my wife and I, we were both in the pool. And we were trying to coax her and she gets up out of the pool like she's mad. And she looks at us, puts her hands on her hips, and she says, Grandma and Grandpa, you don't listen to me. I said, no, honey, we listen to you. We just want you to go out there. Listen to me. I don't want to. I go, okay, that's fine. That's fine. And she gets back in, and ultimately, it's just me and her. And she likes hanging out with me in the pool because I'll do all the kid stuff that she does, splashing each other and throwing the ball and stuff like that. But I had a great time, had a real great time. Then the night took a shit. After she went home, my wife and I decided to meet some family at a local sports bar. We were first going to watch the PWHL championship hockey game um, between Minnesota and Boston. Now, if Minnesota won yesterday, they would have won the first Walter Cup, the championship. And it went pretty well. It was very close. It went into two or three overtimes. The Minnesota team scored, but then they called the goal back and they kept going. And then Boston scored and they won. Well, now Minnesota's not out of it. It's now 2 games to 2 games, and they've got one more game for the championship. So there's still some hope. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, after that game, then the Timberwolves were to play their game, and that didn't go so well. Actually, they have lost 3 games to the Dallas Mavericks in a best-of-7 series. So, in order to win this, the Timberwolves would have to win 4 straight. I think that's asking a little too much. I don't think that's going to happen. But my nephew reminded me, hey, even if they don't win this series, they went farther than anyone expected. They're ahead of schedule. For as young a team as they are, we should be happy about that. I looked at him. I said, "Are you happy about that?" He goes, "Fuck no, I'm not happy about that." But you got to try to rationalize it out for yourself. So started out real good, went real shitty after that, but now we're here and we're talking about what's upcoming in this week. And I'm certain that's going to be good news for most of us and going to be interesting and fun to go through it. Now, we have some emails. It's weird because we had a whole shitload of emails yesterday. In fact, the whole show was emails. You would have thought that I would have caught up and got them all done, and I did yesterday, but we got a bunch more today. And I'm thankful for them. I love the emails, I love the input from the listeners. So let's get to the emails. First one says, "Hey, Mike, first I must give thanks to our vets for the service they gave to our country." Yes, absolutely. It is Memorial Day. We think about our veterans who fought for us and maybe died overseas. I have one relative that was in World War II, my grandfather, Grandpa Ed. He was an interesting guy. He was just a salt of the earth, blue collar guy, not highly educated. He spent most of his life working in grain belt brewery after he came back from the war. He had a wife. He raised two daughters, my mom and my aunt, and he was a good guy. Um, he was in World War II and he fought in an interesting group in World War II. It was called the Red Ball Express. Now, what these people did is they would take trucks, they would haul things, they would take supplies down to the front lines, and then they would take prisoners back. And it wasn't the safest job. They had a machine gun mounted on the side of their cab. And of course, he survived. He came back home. Um, and the funny thing about it is, you know how some people say that people don't talk about their experiences in the war? Every time I saw my grandfather, he talked about something, an experience he had in the war. This obviously had a significant impact on him. But the oddity about what he talked about, none of it was negative. None of it was bloody or gory or tragic or anything like that. It was all just funny stories that he and his buddies would do while they were in the war. I think I've told one before, but the one um, my my grandfather and his troop of people were going into Italy, and apparently there had been some problems with poisoned alcohol. So he told me that before they went into, I think it was Anzio, Italy, the old man, their commander, said to them, "Look, don't drink the alcohol. It's dangerous. It could kill you." And I said, "So what did you do?" He said, "Well, me and my buddy Whitey um, went into Anzio and we started drinking." Of course you did. Of course you did. I said, "Well, what happened? Did you get sick?" He said, "All I know that happened is we drank, we got pretty drunk, and then I woke up 3 days later and I was blind." I go, "What?" He said, "Yeah, the alcohol was tainted. I was in the hospital for a few days and I was blind for a time. My sight came back and I got better, but I clearly should have listened to the old man, as he put it." "Yeah, Grandpa, you should have, but you didn't listen to shit. That's probably where I got it from." Now my grandfather was, as I said, he worked for Greenbelt Brewery, just in the bottling part of it. No special job, no high level job, just a working man. And he ended up being an alcoholic. Now he got over that. He kicked that habit before I was even born. But one of the reasons he became an alcoholic, because when you work with Greenbelt Brewery or any brewery back in those days, um, they said you can drink beer while you're working, but they had a limit. The limit was you could only drink 10 beers in a work shift, and they're working in a bottling plant. And of course, because you work for Greenbelt Brewery, you could bring cases of beer home almost for nothing, and they were always there. And he got into beer a little too much and he became an alcoholic. And I asked him one time, I said, Grandpa, how did you make the decision to quit drinking? He said, well, one day I was working on an old Cadillac. He was always working on cars. He had a lot of Cadillacs. He liked them. He thought they were ritzy, as he would say. And he said he was underneath the car. And this is exactly how he explained it to me. He said he was underneath the car, working on the car, but he passed out and he wet his pants. And he's laying there, passed out. He said, Grandma came out, grabbed me by the foot, pulled me out from under the car, woke me up, was disgusted by my state. And she looked at me and she said, Ed, if you don't stop drinking, we're going to get unhitched. He said, so I went to AA and stopped drinking. I said, well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. And he never drank again after that. He always had beer in the house because he worked for Grain Belt. He had it for, his kids, his sons-in-laws, and whoever else would come by, but he never touched it again. And that was quite impressive. Anyway, I went off on a tangent from this email, and I better get back to it. Now, this emailer said, I went to a bar tonight and watched a friend of mine perform in a band. My buddy had left another band and joined this band, so it was my first time meeting these guys. Long story short, these guys were super nice and I felt it was genuine, but as I sat and listened to the conversation, I knew I was with a group of Trumplafucks. I knew there wasn't any reason to say anything because I knew I was on an island of my own. These people are simpletons. They see things the way they want to see them and not how they really are. That's absolutely true. At the end of the day, I do pray that Democrats win both houses and the White House, and we can't get this country moving in a noticeable direction where more people's lives are better off. We can get it that way if that's what happens. He says it's a huge prayer because these people who can be nice folks are some of the most incredible idiots. I realize most of this isn't anything that you haven't spoken on, many of your podcasts, but maybe the proof is in the pudding and minds can be changed. Thanks for everything you do, Jeff from Ohio. Well, I think there's some minds that you can't change. They are just going to be willful idiots, and that's their lot in life. There will be some other people that will ultimately be embarrassed by how this all plays out. And then they'll act as if they never thought that way, that they were always against Donald Trump and they weren't stupid to fall for the bullshit. The fact of the matter is the base is a small group of people. It's like 25 or 30% of the Republican Party. So it's not enough to win any election. And as I've said, Donald Trump's big problem is that the Republican Party is fractured in either two parts or maybe three parts. And there's no way a Republican can win a presidential election without a unified Republican Party and some independents too. That's the only way they can win. Donald Trump doesn't have the independents. He's lost them thanks to embracing Roe v. Wade, and he can't even pull together a full Republican Party. So just based on that, there's no way the clown can lose or win. He can't win. All right, the next one. Hey, Mike, it's Billy from New Hampshire, Jamie's man. Well, I just wanted to say happy birthday to your wife. Mine was yesterday, so hope she had a great day. By the way, I'm the big 4-0. LOL. Okay, have a great holiday weekend. Take care. Well, happy birthday, Billy. Thank you for the well wishes for my wife. You're 40. My wife is the same age as I am, 64. I remember when I was 40. Yeah, actually, I don't. So fucking long ago. Now, I remember when I turned 40 in the year 2000, and we were worried in the year 2000. As soon as it hit 2000, of course, we thought the world was going to end because of that whole scare, and it was all bullshit as I kind of expected it would be. All right, now this next one I believe is talking about Donald Trump when he was speaking at the Libertarian Convention. And this is interesting. We need to talk about this a little bit. This emailer says he's so damn dumb saying to nominate him to if you want to win. They boo him and he says, I guess you don't like winning. I'm just blown away that they asked 2 to 3 dozen of New York police officers around the courthouse where the hush money case is happening. Only one officer out of the 2 to 3 dozen knew he salutes the January 6th rioters before every campaign speech. I'm just dumbfounded at how many officers don't pay attention to what an ass he is to officers and calling military people suckers and losers. That really doesn't sit well with me, having a father who served in Vietnam and a grandfather who served in the Korean War, and another grandfather that served in World War II. My dad's uncle died in World War II. Scott. Yep, I tend to agree with you. And this whole speech at the Libertarian Convention, we're going to talk about that a bit. And that was an absolute failure for Donald Trump. He thought he was doing something there, but he failed. And this has got to hit home with him. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, the next one says, hello, Mike. It's the economy, stupid, is the primary driver of votes. Always has been, always will be. Now, I know the economy is in hot. No argument there. But to the less informed, easily manipulated, there's a recession. Yeah, I think there's some people out there, usually Trump-la-fucks. Inflation has taken a toll on everyone. You can argue that the U.S. is faring better than other countries. Thank you, Joe Biden. But that may not mean much to someone who is struggling day to day. I would certainly argue that a second Trump term would actually increase inflation. As hard as I try, I can't seem to convince Trump supporters. Don't worry about convincing Trump supporters. You can't. You could give them a handful of gold and they wouldn't change their minds. Don't worry about them. They are a lost cause. Just leave them alone. We don't need to convince all the Trump supporters. We just need to convince the reasonably minded folks. Now, there are folks that may not understand where the economy is, because frankly, the economy is in pretty good shape. Take a look at your 401ks, as Donald Trump would say, but they're growing pretty quickly because of an economy, whether you think it's a good economy or not. But when you say it's the economy, stupid, I would say that's true in most situations, in most past elections. But it's a little different now because what's on the hook here? People may think the economy is not the best, or they do think it's the best, but here's one thing they do know. Reasonably minded people know. What they know for a fact is that our democracy is on the line. The economy can be bad, but democracy, people are frightened. We knew they were frightened in 2020, and they turned out en masse. 81 million people voted for Joe Biden, more than any other presidential candidate in history. Donald Trump got 74 million votes. Now, Donald Trump always says something like it's a win for him. He always forgets about Joe Biden getting 81 million. But he'll always say, I received more votes than any sitting president. And that's true. That is true. He got 74 million votes. That's more than any sitting president. Unfortunately, his opponent, Joe Biden, got more. But my point is that in 2020, we had a massive turnout. As I've said before, it isn't because Joe Biden was a great candidate. It was because people were terrified that Donald Trump would get in and he would do some serious damage to this country. And they would have been right. And that's why they didn't vote him in. Those people are more frightened now than they were in 2020 because we know more about Donald Trump. We know the crimes and corruptions he committed. We know the danger that he is. We had January 6th after the election. The fear is still there. In fact, it's magnified now because of all that's happened since January 6th. So the economy may or may not play a factor in this, but I don't think it compares to people's fear about the loss of democracy and the shit show that would ensue. He goes on to say inflation is what it is, and I put character over money any day of the week. I'm retired and living comfortably, but how big is our demographic? What's your opinion, Tom? P.S. Can't wait to see Trump in an orange jumpsuit. That will be a picture to hang on the wall. Well, if you're talking about boomers, I will tell you this. There's probably 60 million boomers. There's a lot of us. But I'm not worried about boomers. I'm worried about the millennials and Gen Zs. They are starting to take over a big part of the electorate. Um, if Donald Trump were a regular candidate and he didn't have all these things working against him, the very basis of our country, the democracy, if that wasn't all hanging by a thread at the prospect of Donald Trump being elected, I would say the economy would have more effect, but I don't think it will have as much effect as it has in previous elections, coupled with the fact that Donald Trump will have multiple criminal convictions hanging around his neck. If Donald Trump and the Republicans were regular Republicans, we might be in for a dogfight. But with all the bad that's coming from the Republican Party and from Donald Trump, I don't think it's even close, frankly. All right. The next one says, Hi, Boomer. My 30-year-old son has always been a keen observer of his own generation. I asked him if the Kansas City Kickers message resonated with all the millennials. He said, hell no. Beyond the stunning sexism, the idea of one income and the wife stays home with the kids is so long gone and tone deaf economically that only a professional athlete could deliver it. Good point. Goes on to say it's like Jeff Bezos telling you to stick your dreams and they are stick to your dreams and they can all come true. It's highly insulting to 95% of them, with only a thin slice of either sex holding out for some antiquated model of a high earning spouse. On a separate note, for those handicapping the Senate, don't count on Maryland. I'm not being sour here, just realistic. Larry Hogan will not lose in Maryland. He's an extremely popular ex-governor and a sympathetic character as a cancer survivor. He's also always sensible and balanced in his tone and is quite clear on how he feels about Trump. So the Senate won't run through Maryland. Sorry, opposing opinions welcomed. And yes, Boom, I do believe that Trump will be convicted in New York, as you do. Hell, absent the hideous, grumpy, disrespectful lawyer barely tangential to the case, they had no defense. And I've become convinced by those who know the jurors often just do the right thing. I'm less sure than you, however, about what impact those convictions will have on the election. Best, Garage Door Jeff. P.S. When Old Soul was doing her cadence rant, listing off all the good things that Red Hat women could have, and still be racist, it was just brilliant. I got so worked up that I almost screamed out to testify. But I was in the garage at 4 a.m., about 10 feet below my wife's sleeping head. I may not be as whipped up as you, Boom, or whipped as you, Boom, talking about my wife, but that'll get a guy an ass kicking up in here. Soul episodes are dangerous. Yeah, she was kind of whipped up of her own accord. That's true. As far as Larry Hogan winning the Senate in Maryland, that's distinctly possible. I don't disagree with you. Larry Hogan isn't a MAGA fuck, though. I mean, I don't know if you remember this story, and I only vaguely remember it. When January 6th happened, the Capitol is being attacked. Donald Trump is holding back the National Guard. I believe Nancy Pelosi may have called Larry Hogan in order to try to get some help with the Maryland National Guard. And I believe Larry Hogan, and he did do some things to help out there. And I think he even called another governor from another nearby state to do the same. So while Larry Hogan is Republican, I don't think he's a dangerous Republican. There's going to be Republicans in the Senate. I just happen to think that the Democrats can pull it off. Somebody like Larry Hogan isn't going to lose. But one of the problems with Republicans is the people they have running against the Democrats are often these crazy fucks. And we know how that goes. Donald Trump has endorsed a lot of people in the last 4 years, and they all lose because they're fucking crazy. The Republicans don't want the crazy ones being the candidates, but they haven't been able to stop it. Larry Hogan isn't one of those people. So I suspect you're right. You would know better than I that he's running for Senate and he will likely win. And I'm not as worried about that as some other clown winning like Ted Cruz. I think Ted Cruz has a real chance of losing, and that will be a plus for the Democrats come cutting time, and we see what the majority is and who has it. All right, the next email says, "Hello, Mike. I really like the new TikTok cast since I'm a daily RB podcast listener. I miss a majority of your TikToks. Maybe you can call it TikCast or TalkCast. I would like to thank you for not bombarding the intro to the cast with ads before any content starts or multiple ads 3 quarters towards the end. I hate fast forwarding through those podcasts that do that since I miss some content often. All the guests' perspectives on your show are great and super informative. Regards, Matt R., Southwest San Antonio, Texas." I wonder if Matt knows Jace. Jace is in San Antonio, Texas as well. All right. Next one says, "Dear Mike, I have to write because I'm still chuckling after watching Diaper Don's absolute cat's arse of an appearance in front of the Libertarian delegates. I watched the Midas Touch article 3 times and laughed my arse off. Why do you say arse? Are you British? I don't say that. Laugh my ass off every time. They look on Herr Gropenfuhrer's face as they booed him time and time again. Shock. He was totally shocked. How do you think the right wing media will try to spin this one? Or maybe they'll just ignore it altogether. I haven't laughed so much in years. The idiot is just oblivious to the hate figure he actually is. Priceless. Oh, his minions tried to pack the room with local young Republicans, but the delegates were not having it. They kicked a lot of the reserved seats at the front reserved for them, I might add. Do you think this is the first time Sure Shits a Lot has come face to face with reality? This will be how it starts, how the worm turns. It's downhill all the way from here. He can't pretend this didn't happen, and the media can't either. His fairy tale is crumbling before his eyes. I'm wondering if he'll have to send an SOS out to the GOP to come to his aid like he did when none of his followers came to cause chaos after his several demands that they come to the court to demonstrate. That face he pulled made my year. It's downhill all the way from here, Diaper Don. I would recommend everyone have a good laugh and watch that article. You'll feel so much more confident that the prick isn't going to win his election. Happy birthday to your better half. Yours sincerely, Angela the Brit." So you are British. I'm sorry. You guys say arse, I say ass. Tomatoes, tomatoes, whatever the fuck. But I appreciate it, Angela. Yeah, and I said this in a TikTok yesterday. I said people love building up, creating a hero or a superhero, if you will. And frankly, over the last 7 years or so, we've seen people just jump on the bandwagon and build Donald Trump up. They're the dumb ones, of course, but they did do that. The thing about it is that as much as they love to build people up, once they get to a certain point, maybe too big for their britches, or they make a mistake, or they fail in some way, society loves more than anything is tearing these motherfuckers down. And Angela, I think you're absolutely right. The worm has turned, and now it's going to become great sport to tear Donald Trump down. And he isn't going to know what to do with that. We're going to get Democrats speaking out more. We are hearing that the administration, after the convictions come in, the administration is going to ramp things up and make fun of him and expose him and talk shit about him. I think you're absolutely right. I think the worm has turned and it's headed the right direction now. This descent will be fast and furious, and Donald Trump will not know what the fuck hit him. All right, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be right back. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. I have one more email, then we'll get to some other news. This one says, "Hi, Boomer. So great to hear Old Soul again. Christy, she is me. I love all of your guests. What truly amazing people." And I couldn't agree with you more. You've been very fortunate with the listeners who come on the program. They are all amazing folks. But it proves my point. Republicans, Trumplafucks, they're dumb motherfuckers. Democrats, liberals, they have much more intelligence. And we get to see it here on the program. And I truly love that when they come on the program or you folks send emails because it allows you some input into the program. And to me, that's very important. It's not about all the shit I spew. I'm just kind of the shit stirrer here. I want other people thinking, I want other people talking, and I want other people participating in what we're doing here. And that's exactly what's happening with the emails and those folks that come on the program. Best of all, those people are so good. All of you people are so good. You make me look good. And I love that about you. Now, she goes on to say, "Before I go off on a tangent about reproductive health care, let me just say that in the case of the election interference trial against the mushroom pecker rapist, Michael Cohen already told the world he stole from the Trump organization in his book, Disloyal. He told us who he was, and I believe he paid and is paying the price. I'm a softie for those who try to mend their ways, so I do believe that he has had a true mea culpa. Anyway, my husband and I raised three women. All three are independent thinkers and stronger than bulls. I'm proud to say that not one of them considered voting for the mango moron and won't in November." So when Harrison Butker, that kicker from Kansas City, was the commencement speaker at the Benedictine College, I guess he was the alternative to Bozo the Clown, and he told women that were receiving their doctorate that they need to stay in the kitchen. You better believe our family group text blew the fuck up. My girls would have walked out and I would have applauded their integrity. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think men think they can tell women how to behave and what we should do with our bodies? Not you or my husband. If only men could get pregnant, that would end all of this back and forth about abortion. Am I right? You are right. I think the vast majority of people know better than that. I think the vast majority of people understand a little bit of the evolution of women's rights. Back when I was young, women's rights were more limited. They fought like hell to get that changed, and it has worked to a certain extent. Not the full extent that we need it to, but to a certain extent. The men that think they have to make decisions for women, it's all about control. It's all very much like racism. I'm an old white guy. I'm a white guy. I'm better than all of you. I should be in control. I'm the only one that can make decisions. It's really about control. And it's because these people are so insecure. The idea that a woman might be ahead of them, make more money than them, or run a country, that just drives them crazy because in their simple little minds, in their antiquated minds, they still believe that men should be in charge of everything. Well, they're going to be learning some lessons in the coming decades because shit's changing. She goes on to say birth control and mifepristone would be available in vending machines on every freaking corner. By the way, I had 3 miscarriages and had to have 2 have DNCs after each one. Now, in 2024, there are women that cannot have the procedure. I would have died of sepsis. Many women are. About giving birth, take your bottom lip and wrap it around your chin and hold it there for about 12 hours. That's how it feels. Women deserve better. Blue Dot in South Jersey. Couldn't agree with you more. That's one of the reasons we have Old Soul on. As I've said before, the whole question about abortion. I'm for it, I'm against it. That's not the question. The question is, do women have the right to have bodily autonomy? Do they have the right to choose what happens to their body? The fact that they're the ones that get pregnant, that's just the way it is. That's the way science works. But the idea you're going to take away a constitutional right away from women, and it could be any constitutional right, it just happens to be about abortion. I've said before, anytime our government wants to take away rights from us, particularly constitutional rights, that should be a red flag. That is a problem for us, and we need to stop that. I think there's a lot of uninitiated men in this world, not as many as some would like you to believe, but enough of them to cause problems. I think these men will never learn. I don't think they'll change their attitudes about anything. The only thing we can hope for is that they go back from whence they came, and that is under the rocks. These men have always been there. They just haven't felt as confident speaking out because they know there would be some pushback. Donald Trump made it okay to talk like this. Now Donald Trump will soon be gone and out of the picture and out of the narrative, and they will have no choice but to head back under their rocks. In a perfect world, we'd like to convert them into reasonably minded people. But you know as well as I do, that's not fucking possible. So all we can hope for is we put enough pressure on them, like I say, and they go back under their rocks. All right. Now, we were talking about this Libertarian convention where Donald Trump showed up. He had the audacity to say, "You should nominate me." Well, Donald, do you want to be the Republican or the Libertarian nominee? You can't do both, motherfucker. You just can't do it. I wish they would have named him the nominee. Then the Republicans would have had to do something else. But Donald Trump did also tell them that he wanted them to vote for him for president, regardless of who the Libertarian candidate was, even though this is a Libertarian convention. He said, "You got to vote for me if you want to win." Well, he got booed. They booed the fuck out of him. They booed the fuck out of him. They were calling him hypocrite over and over again. And then, he came back with a clever retort. Well, I guess you don't want to win. This had to crush Donald Trump's ego, his very sizable ego. I don't know how he's going to handle it, but somebody's getting some shit right now for him to be there. Now, he probably made the choice to be there, but of course, he'll blame it on somebody else. So, in this convention, they are looking to pick a candidate to represent the Libertarian Party. Now, the Libertarian Party doesn't have any real chance of winning anything. But there was some concern that Robert F. Kennedy was looking to be the nominee from the Libertarian Party. He wants to do that because he's on an island by himself. He doesn't have a prayer in any election. He could use some party support, some money from a party. So he was in the running too. Well, Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy didn't do well. In Sunday's first round of presidential nominating voting, Trump reportedly received just 6 write-in votes, which amounted to 0.65% of total delegates. Nice. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who some said was a shoo-in for this nomination, was also eliminated in the first round of voting, receiving only 19 votes. Now get this. Adult film star Stormy Daniels, she got a vote. She actually got a vote. A day earlier, Trump had been booed extensively, as I was talking about, while speaking at the party's convention. He says to them, "You got to vote for me only if you want to win." Trump said, "The heckling cloud, only if you want to win." Maybe you don't want to win. Maybe you don't want to win. Only do that if you want to win. If you want to lose, don't do that. And then he insulted them as his last point. He's trying to encourage them to vote. So he's saying, unless you don't want to win, then don't vote for me. You can't win unless you got me there. And the last thing he said is, yeah, just keep getting your 3% every 4 years. See, that's a way to compel a crowd to vote for you. Insult the fuck out of them. I don't even know why Donald Trump went there. He had no hope of converting these people. And, we were talking about the worm turning and people starting to push back against him. And this was one of the first steps to that. These people hated his fucking guts. They did not like him. He gained nothing. All he did is embarrass himself. And this is something that Donald Trump's been very adept at as of late, embarrassing himself. Donald Trump's going to run up against other people that aren't necessarily libertarians and certainly aren't MAGA that are going to start pushing back, especially after he gets these convictions. He's going to be like a lame animal. He's going to be the weak animal in the herd, and there'll be a lot of people hunting for that motherfucker. Now, Donald Trump's obviously thinking about this criminal trial in the Manhattan district. We're going to get closing arguments tomorrow. There'll be jury instructions, which will be about an hour. And then the jury will get the case and they will deliberate. And they could presumably come back with a verdict as early as the end of this coming week. This is obviously weighing on Donald Trump's mind, and he's already trying to not get himself out of being convicted, just try to save himself some embarrassment, because that's what I've told you. That's the biggest issue to Donald Trump. Is he embarrassed? And that's why when he was at the Libertarian Convention, he was clearly embarrassed, and he's got to be mad as a fucking wet hen, and he's got to find somebody to blame for it. So I'd hate to be in Donald Trump's little camp after something like that, because he's going to be freaking the fuck out. Now, on Sunday, Donald Trump complained about his criminal defense in the hush money cover-up case in New York. Also, closing arguments loom and the trial nears its conclusions, as I stated. Trump has pleaded not guilty in the case, of course. He stands accused of falsifying business records and doing it to impact the election, where the felony falls. Now, as closing arguments get closer, Trump took to Truth Social to lash out at the prosecution and Judge Juan Marchand. In addition to this is what he said. In addition to the fact that I did nothing wrong, NDAs are totally legal and commonly used, and that virtually every legal scholar and expert says in written form that this is a case which has no merit, which is an absolute lie, and should not have been brought. My lawyers have informed me that the highly conflicted and corrupt Judge Juan Marchand will not allow reliance on counsel, which virtually everyone is allowed to use as an additional, though not needed because I did nothing wrong, defense. Now, what he means by that is that he would want to say once he loses that he had bad counsel, and he wanted that as an excuse to get out from under it and have another trial and delay things. But you might remember when this trial started, Alvin Bragg said, you've got to tell us if you plan to use that defense, if you're going to claim your lawyers didn't do a good job. And they did not do that. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So it's not that he's not allowed to do it. He never said he was going to do it. He didn't go through the process necessary to use that defense. So he doesn't get to do it. Trump wrote, this case, which could have been brought 7 years ago, but wasn't because it has no merit, is a disgrace. See, there's where he's wrong. This, they could have brought it 7 years ago. However, and that's what he would have liked. The problem with bringing it 7 years ago is he was the sitting president. And we know there's a memo in the DOJ that says you can't indict a sitting president. So you could have tried to have the trial, but you would have never had the trial because you couldn't indict the motherfucker. So, Donny, think about what you're saying. Now, he also added, it was only begun to interfere with crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, me, reliance on counsel, make America great again. He doesn't even know what he's saying. Trump continued in a separate post mentioning the prosecutor. Can anyone believe that Soros-backed DA Alvin Bragg was able to get a delay of 7 days to his corrupt and unconstitutional case against me with no sequester? Legal expense, legal equals legal expense, Trump said Sunday. The only thing Bragg has going for him is that the corrupt and highly conflicted judge, which is a lot. That's what I mean. He's saying that the advantage that Alvin Bragg has is a corrupt and highly conflicted judge, which is a lot. You see what he's doing there. He's messaging, I know I'm going to lose, so I'm going to use this as a complaint after I lose. But this isn't like an election. A conviction is a conviction. You can complain all you want about it after the fact, but you have some rules and regulations that you have to follow once you've been convicted and are out on bail, presumably. And since there is no more court case in this, other than maybe an appeal that maybe comes 2 years from now, you're going to have to follow those rules because they can still put you in jail as punishment as far as contempt goes. Even after the trial, he can be held in contempt for not following the rules of his release. Excuse me. Now, there's another story out there that I find kind of interesting, and I wasn't sure really what they meant by this. Apparently, some people are wondering if the Secret Service team charged with protecting Donald Trump is just playing politics. Trump recently gave a speech before the Libertarian National Convention, as we talked about, where he begged for the group's nomination despite being booed from the beginning to the end of the short speech. That tells you something else. Donald Trump never makes short speeches, but this one was because it wasn't going well. It was reported on that day that Secret Service removed hundreds of squeaky rubber chickens from the arena. Those were purportedly given out by independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. supporters to disrupt the former president's talk. It's really not the Secret Service's job. No one's going to try to assassinate Donald Trump with a rubber chicken. I'm just saying. Secret Service agents are confiscating the rubber chickens the pro-RFK Jr. super PAC handed out to attendees to disrupt Trump's speech tonight at the Libertarian Convention. That's what CNN reported. No lighters, no water bottles, no noisy chickens, one agent yelled out to people in line. This move didn't go over well on social media. Now, former prosecutor Ron Flipkowski said Trump's Secret Service detail wouldn't allow the chickens into his speech. I guess they could be deadly weapons, he added on Saturday. They act more like Trump campaign security than Secret Service. And that's an excellent point. Conservative attorney George Conway broached the subject Sunday. He said, I'm curious about the U.S. Secret Service's rationale for confiscating squeaky rubber chickens at the Libertarian Party convention. The anti-Trump activist wrote, is it the agency's job to protect former presidents, or maybe just one in particular, psychologically vulnerable one, from narcissistic injury, asking for taxpayers? Here's a tweet that came from @JaggedTrain, replied to that saying that every Trump appearance going forward will have hundreds of rubber chickens. Rubber chickens will define his campaign from here on out. Gotta love it. And, that's a thought. That's a thought. As I told you before, once Donald Trump starts on his descent, people are going to pile on. They're going to make fun of this motherfucker. These are not going to be fun times for Donald Trump. He despises being embarrassed. People know that they can get to him in certain ways with rubber chickens or otherwise, and you can bet He's going to get nailed every time he's out there talking. Now, this next story, I bring it up for two reasons. First of all, it supports everything I've said about Donald Trump getting convicted. And it's being said by somebody I truly respect as far as an analyst, a legal analyst on TV. He is MSNBC legal analyst Neil Katyal. He predicted that former President Donald Trump will be convicted in his New York hush money trial. Now, I'm in good company now. It's not just me saying it, it's somebody who was a solicitor general at one point, a trusted and capable prosecutor. The Republican nominee faces the criminal charges, and we know all about that, the 34 felony charges and all the details with regards to that. Now, during a Sunday interview on MSNBC with host Jen Psaki, Katyal said that Trump's claim that he was not aware Cohen gave payments to Daniel was false because he watched over every penny in his business, and that was pretty much clarified in the trial. Now, Trump is also criminally indicted in 3 separate jurisdictions for his attempt to overturn the 2020 presidential election. We don't know when those are going to happen. And as I've said, really doesn't matter as long as he gets convicted in the Manhattan district. Now, in the conversation, Psaki said this: what should we expect from the defense given what we've seen over the last couple of weeks in their closing arguments? This is what Katyal says. First thing I'd say, Jen, is that it's just significant that we're finally at closing arguments after Trump's repeated attempts to delay this, to stop the trial, even just a couple of days ago, rushing to the Court of Appeals, saying the judge has to be recused for bias and all that stuff. All of that has been beaten back by the appellate court in New York. And so now we are finally going to get closing arguments. And I think what Trump's defense is going to do is basically say that this is not a case about Donald Trump. It's a case about Michael Cohen, and then putting Michael Cohen on trial. But call him a liar. They'll say he was convicted because he was a liar, that he's in it for his own ends, that he's in it for ego because he's not a spurned lover, but a spurned lawyer by Donald Trump and the like. And what the prosecution is going to say, picking up on that, Andrew said, Andrew Weissman just a moment ago, and I totally agree with that, is that this is not just a case about Michael Cohen. It's a case about Michael Cohen plus. Cohen is just the gravy. And this is something I've said before too, and it's things like the Hope Hicks testimony that Andrew Weissman referred to, but it's also handwritten notes that we've got, and those checks that you just flashed on the screen a moment ago, which picks up on paragraph 33 in the complaint. These are checks that Donald Trump himself signed. And so that shows knowledge of the whole scheme. And I think at the end of the day, the Trump defense is going to play trying to get to beyond a reasonable doubt, just getting one juror who's going to say, hey, I disagree, because in our system, that means you can't put him in jail. And the prosecution is going to say, this is common sense. We're talking about a guy, Donald Trump, who watched every penny. Do you really think that he would have been cool with all this money going out of his account without knowing it? Do you really think he would just reimburse $430,000 or whatever the number is without some knowledge about what was going on? Of course not. So it's a common sense case, and I suspect that it's going to be successful. And I couldn't agree more. Common sense. You know how I am about common sense and logic. Common sense and logic actually normally gives you the answer to most of your questions. It's just that most people go with emotions and fear, and they don't use logic and common sense, and they whip it up in their own hearts and in their own minds and make it worse than it is. This is a very simple case. Donald Trump is going to lose. He's going to get convicted of multiple felony charges. I don't know if it's going to be all 34, but it could be. And if we're talking 10, 20, 30 felony convictions, that's going to take its toll on Donald Trump. It's going to take its toll on the Republican Party, and it's going to absolutely destroy his hopes if he had any, in terms of the November election. Now, this is interesting about Donald Trump and some of the police officers that are kind of guarding the areas he's in New York. Now, we know that Donald Trump accused of dozens of felonies. He literally salutes violent rioters who assaulted police officers, has nevertheless been treated like a hero by New York City police officers during his criminal trial, possibly because many are unaware of his pledge to pardon those who attacked officers during his January 6, 2021 coup attempt. I don't get that. How do you not know this? I mean, this is one of the problems with people who strictly watch Fox News. There's so much evidence, so much information that they aren't being told by Fox News. And this is why these people are willful idiots. I'm talking whether they be police officers, doctors, or street sweepers. I don't fucking care who they are. They're willful idiots if they don't make the effort to get to know all the facts. They only hear what they want to hear. Now, there's a quote, "That's news to me," said one of the lower Manhattan street corner that the former president's motorcade has just driven past. "I had not heard that," said another near the parked black shuttle buses that have been ferrying Trump's congressional supporters who attacked the trial judge and district attorney on his behalf. In fact, of 24 New York City police officers interviewed by Huffington Post within a few blocks of the Center Street courthouse where a jury will soon decide his fate, only one said he knew that Trump routinely honors the January 6 police assaulters and plans to pardon them. That's frightening. Police officers, ill-informed about a future convicted felon. You would think better of these people, but everybody has their agenda. And it's frustrating, and it's a little frightening to know that we have people walking around the streets of New York with guns and authority, and they don't understand what's really going on. That's tragic. Now, there's another quote from another officer. "I don't think that should happen," who, like others, spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not permitted to talk to the press while in uniform and on duty. "I think that sets a bad example. If you do a crime, you should be held accountable for it." Well, of course, you absolutely should be held accountable, but a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people don't think he needs to be held accountable. And as I say, that's tragic and a little bit frightening. At his rallies, the former and would-be future president stands at attention and even salutes while a recording of the national anthem, sung by January 6 jail detainees who violently assaulted police on that day, is played over loudspeakers. In the speech after speech, he has called those accused and in many cases convicted of felonies, hostages, and political prisoners, and has vowed to grant them pardons if he is elected. Now, Trump's got 88 felony charges himself throughout his criminal trial, has been treated like a celebrity by New York City police officers, and nonetheless, video from April 16th, for example, shows him shaking hands and taking photos with a large group of officers outside a campaign stop following that day's court proceedings. Now, as I've told you before, once this clown gets convicted, there's going to be a lot of change in attitudes. Information continues to come out about the things he's done. Once the Manhattan District case is done, we'll be able to focus on some of the things happening in D.C. We should have some resolve to this immunity case. And once that happens, then we can start things back up in Washington, D.C. with Judge Chutkan. We'll hear more about what's happening sometime soon with Georgia and Fani Willis, and of course, Florida. They're going through some things down there, and I'm thinking that Jack Smith may be looking at getting this judge recused. It depends on how she's going to respond to his recent pleading that Donald Trump should have a gag order because he's putting law enforcement in danger. She has to answer that. If she doesn't answer it, she will be sent to the 11th Circuit. If she refuses to give Donald Trump a gag order, she will be sent to the 11th Circuit. Now, if she does give him the gag order, she's got a problem on the other side. She's going to piss off Donald Trump. And she has been reluctant to do that up to now. So we'll see what happens. Jack Smith has basically set a trap that is a no-win situation for Aileen Cannon. And she's not the brightest woman in the world. She's not the brightest judge in the world. She's incompetent, she's inexperienced, and she's biased. So it's going to be interesting to see what she ultimately does with this question put to her. Will she put a gag order on Donald Trump? And when she does, what will happen? Now, I could see her maybe putting on the gag order just to save her ass. And then when the gag order is asked to be enforced, do nothing. We've seen judges do that before. So I'm not sure how that's all going to turn out. My focus is on the Manhattan District and getting the convictions. That changes everything. I was telling somebody else, and I'll tell you too, a lot of people are thinking about all 4 trials. They're thinking about a bunch of different things. And when you do that, it becomes almost incomprehensible and it becomes a juggling act. You've got all this hanging over your head and you act as if all of it has to happen the way you want it to happen, when you want it to happen. And it becomes overwhelming. The better way to deal with things is take one thing a step at a time. Let's focus on the Manhattan District. Let's get convictions because that'll have some bearing on the other 3 trials. And it won't be good for Donald Trump. Focus on the Manhattan District. We get the convictions and then shit changes for Donald Trump. And things will change in those upcoming trials too, whether they come before or after the election. Take it a step at a time. Don't try to worry about everything. That never works out well. It'll be overwhelming and you'll fucking upset yourself. And there's no reason to be upset. All of what's going on is stuff you can't control. Do your best to do what you do, speak out, do whatever you do, but let the chips fall where they may. You have no choice. So why worry about it? All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.